I have spent the majority of my life in spaces with many people of color. I grew up and still live in the Philly area. I went to school in the Philly public school system, and it wasn't until I got to college that I actually was surrounded in white spaces. But my leisure activities have always been in white predominated spaces: dance and figure skating. I am regularly the only person on the ice at any rink that I go to, no matter if I'm in Nashville or Philly suburban counties or LA. I can count on one hand how many other black people were on the ice at the same time as me. And I can count on one hand how many of those people I actually knew, which most of the time was all of them. I actually can't even tell you if we have any black people in our club besides me. And I can tell you that I have seen people come and go. I think the common misconception of racism is that you need to feel oppressed in order for it to be true. But in 25 years of my life, I have not once felt alienated in white spaces. In fact, I've been praised in white spaces. I graduated magna cum laude in undergrad. I currently have a 4.0 in my graduate program. And yes, there was a time in my very short career before I went back to school that I was mistook by a funder to be my coworker, where the only thing in common we had was the fact that we had some brown in our skin, but we weren't even the same complexion or the same height. Actually, we had different things on too. That being said, we need to have a serious look into how racism is affecting the sport and how alienating being a person of color is in a white-dominated space. So there's a general sense of not belonging when you're the only person who looks like you. And that can look a lot of different ways. It can be your skin color, it can be your weight, it can be your gender identity. And honestly, a lot of that also stems from childhood. I was one of the only darker skinned people in my family because I got my skin color from my dad's side, and I have not really been a part of that family for most of my life. I remember wanting to look like my brothers, my aunts, my cousins, because I didn't want to stand out. I wanted to be like everybody else. Everybody else in my family on my mom's side is fairer skinned, even though we're all black. I didn't hate being brown. I just didn't like sticking out. Despite all that, I never tried to be in spaces where I fit in because of the way I look. I like and still like emo music and classical music, and I joined choir, and I played acoustic guitar. I hated rap and R&B. I chose contemporary dance and ballet over hip hop or jazz or tap. I learned Japanese and Korean, where those two cultures have some of the most rife history of colorism with just their own people, let alone people from other countries. Despite all that, I did find my core group of black people who liked the same things that I did, and honestly, we were ridiculed for not liking stereotypically black things. And I'm not saying that being black is an ostracizing experience. There's a lot more that goes into it, and I think it's something that we really need to start thinking about and talking about openly. And I say this not to demonize the black community or play victim, but I'm about to talk about why this is relevant to being black in figure skating. I walk into most rinks knowing that I'm going to be the only melanated person that has walked through that building today. I'm not rich, and neither are most of the people that I skate with. I know that walking into a test session or a competition that there are going to be mostly ladies in their 60s and 70s, maybe their 50s, who are going to judge me and find every little thing that they could to mark me down as not good enough. They say that that's just the nature of the sport, But my psychology degree tells me that implicit and honestly explicit bias plays as much of a role as recency effect in how people perceive you. I know that there are plenty of kids, teens, adults who feel uncomfortable with their coaches or other people at the rink for how they're treated or the things that they say to them, even if they didn't mean any harm. And I know that you might be thinking that today's culture of wokeness or hypersensitivity is unbearable, but when coaches assume that you won't be able to afford higher caliber training or shooting for regionals or nationals or even becoming a coach, there are people who are affected by that and are ultimately dissuaded from the sport altogether. Money may be an issue for a lot of Black people, but it goes deeper than that, and nobody wants to talk about it. Now, I have to underline that my lack of lived experience of oppression in the sport does not invalidate other people's experiences, because people have told me a lot of things that it's not my place to tell. I personally have an incredibly supportive skating community online and offline. I've been featured with Coach Michelle. I was featured with Philly Mag, and I also did a little segment with the rink I worked at as a figure skater and a rink guard. But that's the problem. Black exceptionalism. The fact that I, of all Black figure skaters out there, have been given a voice by not U.S. figure skating, but the community around it, because I'm approachable and that I won't make white people feel bad, is a problem. There are people with lived experience of racism in this sport, and you know why they won't rock the boat. Fear of retaliation, ostracization, being forced to quit. History is more than just the Black figure skaters who were able to overcome all the barriers that have kept a lot of people from succeeding now. It's more than Atoy Wilson or Debbie Thomas or Surya Bonalee, Mabel Fairbanks, Star Andrews. This Black History Month, I want us to talk about the Black figure skaters who couldn't, who went to show skating because they weren't competitive, who dream of coaching but have no foot in the door. Those who broke all those barriers that continue to oppress Black figure skaters in 2021 are not the ones that we should be talking about, because we know what they did. And there's also a reason why we don't hear about them much. We need to have an open dialogue about the role of racism in figure skating at every age level and every competitive level, because we're not talking about it right now. And it will continue to be a problem until there is real open discussion with all parties involved. And this is not just a reflection on U.S. figure skating. This isn't just a reflection on ISU. This is everybody. This happens on the club level. This happens at competitions. Everybody's affected. If we stay silent and if we don't put constant pressure on change, then nothing will.